Good morning. I wanted to talk a little bit about Dark Age of Man and the random seed chart, the RSC. That is the 3 dice 6 chart that's used to help the GM create a living world with variables and things that occur on a scale of danger, right? For the most part. I've talked about this before, but the one thing I really haven't talked much about, but if you watch our actual plays and you hear our conversations at the end of those sessions, I talk a lot about how many random seeds show up in the session. And I wanted to clarify, depending on the session or what we're doing, for instance, you can pace your random seed rolls or your random seed introduction of these variables at all kinds of different speeds, right? You don't have to be rolling one on top of another. You don't have to have one set up ready for that when as they play. So when I run one-offs or play tests, I use the random seed chart a lot. So in that 2-hour session, there's all kinds of potential stuff the players are going to get involved in. However, when I'm going to run a campaign or a chronicle, I want to give the characters a lot more room to kind of live, to choose some direction for their characters at the initial start, to meet or pursue a motivation or an action or something. Still set them up, still give them an inciting incident, but then you can slow the roll, right? Let them live in Dredgewater a little bit. Let them be in that space for a while. Let them deal with each other. And then I can roll up that first random seed and hold it. I can hold it to when it makes contextual sense. Maybe roll up a second one if I'm not happy with the first one I roll up, and see where that can stick to, and I can just provide it. So we've had sessions where they've played the full 2 hours on one random seed, right? The setup, they're pursuing their thing, and then maybe one random seed comes up and there's fallout from them dealing with that, or like Dell in one of our sessions, he dealt, I think, only 3. He met a king to be and thought he was a liar. That led to him dealing with a princess. And then, of course, the flood hit Dredgewater, and that changed the whole nature of the session as it destroyed Dredgewater, and it sent him with this young princess as his ward, hiking over to Howard Town or Howley Town or something, whatever town it was I had to come up with. So there were maybe 2 seeds in that session. That entire 2-hour game was really just two seeds that have impacted play. Lately, I've been using seeds a lot. That would be, again, an option, total option. I think the last game we ran, I used 7 of the seeds. The last 2 games I ran, 7 seeds came into that 2-hour session, right? So we do make it clear in the rules when you should be rolling and how you should use them, etc. So we define all these things. But I thought, pacing for the RSC could be probably a little daunting for the GM, the presenter, if they don't kind of think about, do I have to roll these all the time? When can I involve them? So I think about pacing. Do you want your game to be a little more slower, methodical? Do you want them dealing with the inciting incident the most out of the gate? And then a random seed can complicate that inciting incident. Most experienced GMs are going to understand how things arise, right? When you're running a module, they're dealing with an act 1. They're in a scene dealing with a thing, or they're on the road to blah, and there's something they're going to encounter, right? If you're doing a open, again, we basically ask our presenters to treat our game like an open sandbox, open world sandbox. In other words, the players are free to go left and pursue a personal motivation, right? Something they've overheard, something they read in the rules. They've read about Vadamot Mort, the Lord Washburn's kind of arch nemesis on the border south. A player may say, I want to saddle up. I want to take my horse. I'm going to ride down to Vadamot Mort's land, and I'm going to start raiding and harassing his people. Or, players can kind of come up with the motivations or hopefully as a group, they'll come up with motivations. But so you can pace when you introduce those seeds. You can pace when they make total sense, right? So I thought I should talk about that a little bit, pacing. And this is true of literature. It's true of TV series. It's true of movies. It's true of gaming. There's a pace. There's a definite pace to, I think, everything that we encounter or we create, whether it's a role-playing game, living table, or whether we're reading our favorite book and the pacing of that book, or watching our favorite series and the pacing of those plot points, or a film or a play, act 1, act 2, act 3, act 4. There should be a kind of a sense of pacing of what you're trying to hopefully see evolve. So in Dark Age of Man, you could quickly overwhelm the players with too much, and they never really have a chance to pursue their character and their character's motivations, right? You can also if you're not careful, overwhelm them with things that turn the game into too much chaos, right? Again, players are generally going to be able to avoid, in many cases, what they want to deal with and what they don't. Not everything is something they can't avoid. A flood, for instance, is catastrophic. It affects everybody. A dragon attacking Dredgewater would affect, for the most part, everybody. Now, how you contend with that dragon? Do you run off into the woods? Do you mount up and ride away? Do you stay to fight? Do you try to get its attention and lead it away? There's all kinds of ways players could deal with that major epic thing. Something like a flood, more difficult to avoid. A biblical flood. But something like hearing rumors of bandits, or seeing 2 bandits stealing a fishing boat, on Dredge River, those are all things players decide how they want to contend with those things. The setting will put them in a situation. The inciting incident generally gets their attention. Everything else, for the most part, happens organically. But I think that's one of the things that's probably the most difficult to explain. How in my sessions am I getting on average seven seeds introduced to the players? Sometimes it's just a rumor. They hear of something that's a choice. They choose to ignore it, right? I think Jory and Dell's last session, I rolled 7 seeds. They encountered 5. They encountered all 7, but 2 of them were things they heard of or knew of. They could have pursued personally in more detail. They were aware of them. So they just became aware of these things, which are now something they could choose to look at later, something they could choose to pursue right now if it's interesting to them. So I think pacing is the thing that probably will take GMs, presenters, a little more time to kind of get comfortable with. How much do you hammer them with new seeds? I think it depends on the pace of your game. It depends on what the players are achieving. If the players and the first seed, they encounter a band of strangers that have just walked into Dredgewater, rode into Dredgewater on horses, and for whatever reason, it piques the curiosity of the players to investigate who these strangers are. That could be the only seed they encounter the entire session, dealing with these strangers. What are these strangers? Who are these strangers? Where did they come from? What are they doing here? What are they about? And that can lead to who knows what. One seed could be all your session deals with. So there is no hard and fast rule as to how many seeds should show up in play. I average, I think, 5. I think the lowest I've ever had is maybe 3 rolled, and then I've had some, of course, you roll the same number. If I do that, I tend to say, okay, then I won't roll another seed for another few minutes. So if I roll 13 and I introduce that seed to them and they're dealing with it or they know of it, and then a few minutes later I roll again, it's 13, I just say, okay, we're going to keep moving where we're going, and then I'll roll another seed later to how I'm going to introduce that. But so anyway, we always suggest that the presenter, right after they set up the situation, right after they set up the setting and the inciting incident, where you're at. You're in Dredgewater, it's summer, and you're about to watch them draw and quarter a criminal. You're standing in the square with all these Dredgewater peasants who are cheering as they're about to torture and kill a criminal on the orders of Lord Washburn, and that's where we start the game. I always roll I set it up and drop them, I roll that first roll, and I start immediately thinking, how am I going to introduce this seed to them? It may be the only seed they deal with. They may pursue, who's this criminal? Why are they drawing quartering him? What's going on? So do we know anything about this guy? Who is this guy? Et cetera, et cetera. And then that leads to who knows what adventure, right? So I want to talk about pacing, because I think pacing is important to any game we run and how we run it. Many of them are decided for us by the nature of the players, whether they're on rails, are they going through the dungeon and they're moving slowly to door 2 of room A? How are they going about getting into that room? And then what do they discover in room A? Is it a fight? Is it a treasure hunt? Is it looking for trapdoors? Dungeon crawls have their own kind of pace to them. And then, of course, there's other games where they're scene based. I think the 2D20 Star Trek, where we're going to introduce a setup and a scene. and they got to resolve in a way that scene, and then we're on to the next scene, so to speak. So pacing is dictated by how quickly players assess or deal with whatever challenges or conflicts exist in the moment. A lot of improvisational open world sandbox games, the pacing would be based on movement, right? A hex crawl. A lot of the pacing of the game is the hex crawl. We're moving northeast toward the woods. Rumor has it there's some monster in those woods. We want to get the warrant on, right? And there were monster hunters, and they're headed that way. Well, we're going to roll, we're going to move, we're going to investigate, we're going to camp, we're going to do it again. We might run into wandering monsters. So, of course, Sandbox and Hexcrawl have a pace. Sandbox very often has a pace set by the players, right? The players are direct, in a way, dictating pace of what it is they're doing and investigating and getting up to, so to speak. So, all right. Anyway, I want to talk about that. Dark Age of Man and our random seed charts, the RSC 3x6 chart, and how we introduce those seeds and at what pace. And I think for the most part, presenters, it will get comfortable with it. However, don't feel like you need to use 10 seeds in a session, or that if you've only used one, something's wrong. Or no, you'll know. It's really a very natural and organic seat of the pants naive play, right? It really does kind of find this pattern, right? There is this magic circle that happens at the table. There is this connection the players will make to the world and to the thing we're doing, and it should be fairly self-reliant, right? You don't have to have necessarily a hard and fast structure. So, all right, thank you for watching this video. See you next time. Bye.